A good life is a life built around fulfilling work, play, relationships, and lifelong learning. Welcome to Good Life Conversations, where we explore the stories and strategies of inspiring everyday people who are striving to create a life of purpose, meaning, and connection. Welcome to this Good Life Conversation. My name is Jay. I'm your host and the founder of Discover Year. Today's guest is Leslie Seiler. Welcome, Leslie.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming. And
Mhm.
I'm very excited about this. A little bit about Leslie's background. So she's a workshop producer and facilitator. So she works with groups, she helps them learn in fun ways. She's a creator and producer of theatricals and fundraising events. She's also does comedy and improv. She's does some event management on the side. She likes to
Yes.
design flowers. She's a floral designer. So she
hmm
is a wonderfully complex and busy person. She likes to dabble in a lot of things like many of our mentors. And her background, you might not be surprised to hear, educationally, she did a bachelor's in theater from Dalhousie University.
hmm
So lots
hmm
to cover here, Leslie. And as I mentioned before, we do have quite a few students typically in Discover Year who are interested in the arts. So I'd love to focus on that. But we
Awesome.
always like to start by hearing a little bit about your habits and your daily routine. So can you tell us a little bit about what your days look like on the bookend? So what time do you wake up? Do you have a morning routine? How does that look? And then when you're winding down at the end of the day, do you have any similar routines or different routines? And what time do you go to bed? Tell us a
hmm
little bit about that.
Okay, perfect. Well, because I have so many different jobs and do so many different things, kind of depends on the day. But on average, if it's an office or I'm going somewhere in the day, I'm up at like 6:30-ish. If it's a work from home or just a different kind of looking day, maybe I don't have something till later, I'm up around 7:30, that kind of thing. Morning routine, just mostly coffee. And then sometimes it's always opening the computer, checking the email, and just making sure that I have a gauge of what's happening that day because it does vary kind of like kind of so much. And if so then again, what the day looks like is a little bit always different. Like right now, for example, 2 days a week I'm in an office, 3 days a week I'm juggling all kind of a bunch of different jobs kind of from home. So working from home, those kinds of things. And then end of the day, I wish I had like a Hollywood routine of like she meditates for 30 minutes and does like 40 minutes on skincare. And I don't, my friends. I think it is because a lot of my jobs tend to be very physical. A lot of them just tend to be again, it's just a variety. So I my nighttime routine is falling asleep watching TV.
Okay. Okay. Actually falling asleep. And do you stay asleep
Yeah.
after you? Yeah.
No, no. Then I'll wake up and I will go to bed. But again, I don't have that perfect Hollywood like she winds down or she makes her to-do list for tomorrow. Yeah, no, no, no. We crash at the end of the night. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you
Yeah.
for your honesty.
Thank you.
And also too, so our mentors are all over the place a little bit, but in the mornings you say coffee first. So do you
Mhm,
like have any personal time or reading, or do you kind of just
mhm,
wake up, coffee in the mug, sit down and
mhm.
check your
hmm
schedule?
You're right. I lied a little bit. Some I usually do like even just like a 15-minute little Pilates routine. So I have a little app on my phone. You just get in there, you can do it. And listen, like I'll do it in my pajamas. Like what's great about it is it's like you don't need to put on your workout clothes. Just get up.
Mm.
So it's a little bit of like a stretch or like a core thing, and it is kind of it's quiet. And I do that while the coffee maker is running, and
Mm.
it's almost timed perfectly. So by the time you've done that, you hear the beep beep and the coffee is ready, and then you go and grab that coffee. So I guess I do have an extra thing. That's a pretty important thing I forgot, but yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you. Thanks for
Yeah.
sharing. And the
Yeah,
fact that
yeah.
you get up at different times depending on the day, do you find
hmm
that that impacts you at all?
I no, I feel like it's so slight because it's only the difference of maybe around an hour to 90 minutes difference in that sort of waking up time. So it's not like getting up at 5 or getting up at 10. So no, that's I seem to be okay with that. There have been times in jobs that I've had where I've had to get up at 4 or 5, things like that. Those are a little more I'm still able to do it, and I'm actually a morning person, so I'm pretty good in the morning. That's when I do my best work. So, for me, when it's something that early, it's on the back end. It's going to bed earlier or figuring out how to
Hmm.
make sure you get at least like minimum 6. 7 is great, 8 is wonderful, but like, yeah, yeah,
Okay.
making sure you get a little bit of sleep. Yeah, yeah.
Yes. So you're mentioned a morning person. I'm curious. I'm
Mhm.
always curious about this for people. Is that something you've known for a long time? How did you uncover that you do your best work in the morning? And is that more recent for you?
I think it would I would say it's like the last 15 years. So you would say that's not recent, but I would say in sort of in the first part of my career when I was an actor and a performer, by nature it was kind of the opposite because I only worked at when I was working at Second City, for example, and I was on their main stage. I had to be at work at 7 p.m. That was my call time. So,
Mm,
so adjusting your day to peak at 8 p.m. is interesting. So for that chunk of time, I'm going to say 5 to 10 years, that was kind of the schedule. So, yes, I would say after that, I kind of just pivoted into a morning kind of person. I think even when I was on stage, I probably still worked better in the morning. So, it was a harder adjustment to peak at night for me. So now it's much more natural to get
mm,
up and like I mean from like the sweet spot if I'm doing even creatively or anything that I have to do or sort of use any kind of brain power for yeah, between 9 and 2. By 2 p.m. I'm sort of like,
mm.
can we wrap this up? Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's just where my brain is working best. Yeah.
Yes. Great.
Yeah.
We hear that a lot. I'd say the majority of people that I interview talk about mornings being more productive than afternoons.
Hmm.
That's not always,
Hmm.
but that tends to be more of the trend.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And so we've talked about some things that I think for you are perhaps both hobbies and work, but I'd love for you to
Yes.
tell us a little bit about what are some things you do for fun?
Oh, okay. Well, I love cooking, and a lot of people say like, "Oh, to go home at night and make dinner, what a drag." I love it. Even after a full work day, the other day I came home and I was like, "Oh, my husband's not here. I'm gonna make dinner." Um, and I had the kitchen to myself, and I'll usually put on a show or something and watch it, and I just love it. So cooking, huge downtime thing. Baking also, but that's more of like a an afternoon activity on a Saturday or something like that.
Mm,
My other downtimes include I just love games and gaming so much. And I don't mean like video games. I'm a terrible first person perspective player, can't even grasp it. But so I am talking like games with people. So like having
mm,
games night, hosting games night. During the pandemic, obviously this all kind of went to Zoom. So we would organize trivia nights with friends and play like so those kinds of things. So any chance there is to either play a game or create a game that I'm going to play with people, um, that's how I spend a lot of my
mm,
downtime. You are right though. All of my hobbies do kind of cross over because I was going to say, and another thing I might do in my downtime would be to like write comedy or write bits or things like that. But that's more too. But I guess stand up is still a little bit of a hobby for me. I'm not sort of doing it for money, I suppose, right now. So I guess that is
mm.
kind of still lives in the hobby world, but doing stand up comedy would be another. Yeah.
Okay. And so this is interesting. So if you're writing a bit, like tell us a bit how that would go. Like, would you just be
Mhm.
walking around or sitting down and like have an idea and just feel compulsed to write it down?
Yes, they come to me all the time. So like on the subway or on the bus or sometimes like I know this sounds crazy, but like sometimes in my sleep. So like as I'm waking up, I'll be like writing a bit or thinking of something funny.
Mm,
And it's mostly yeah when I'm kind of like alone with my own thoughts that then I'll just like start writing bits. So that's why the bus and the subway are huge for that. So like even when I was living in Los Angeles for the past 8 years I was there, I had a notebook and I would, if I was ever riding the bus, to work or something like that, I would write bits down in that. And yeah, so they just come to you and you just start to think of something funny and you're like, oh, that's kind of funny. And then you just start kind of like jotting it down. Then I know it's really good if it comes from the notebook to the computer. And then
mm.
once I'm in the computer, then I have all these docs, new material, January 2026 or whatever. And you go in there and then you kind of start forming it that way. Yeah.
So you kind of like you take the note, you get home at some point, you'll open the notebook up, review
Hmm.
what's in there, and decide,
Hmm.
oh, this wasn't actually something, or this is maybe something. Let me transfer it
Yes,
to the computer.
yes, and sometimes exactly like that. Yeah, 'cause sometimes I will read through and go, "Oh, that's no," or sometimes it's something that's not evergreen. And what I mean by that is like something happened in the news that day that was funny, and it was funny last Thursday, but already that thing is out of the news cycle or it's already gone. So it's like
Mm,
it's not a joke or a bit that um, you would ever do again. It's over. It's dead. Um,
yeah.
but a lot of the time, when I go to the computer and then start sort of putting it in there, that's when it'll become clear to me pretty quickly if it is something or not, because you just kind of start writing and then you kind of go on tangents. And then at some point, you kind of have to go back, or at least this is what I do, and structurally make sure that the jokes are structured. Like you can write stuff forever and you think it's kind of funny, but stand up is a very different art form from improv or sketch comedy. where the expectation in stand up is that there are jokes. So you do need to, and there's different kinds of punchlines, but you do need to make sure they are there. So it's kind of, you take the idea from the notebook, you throw it onto here, you start to write. It either starts to go somewhere or it doesn't. If it starts to go somewhere, you flesh it out a bit, but then you have to go back and go, okay, I need to make sure there's a punchline here. There's a laugh break, a laugh break, a laugh
Mm.
break, if that makes sense. I may have gone on a whole tangent and people are like, what is she talking about?
No,
But
I think it's really cool, and it's the kind of thing that I suspect hopefully students might want to fill in some more blanks when they ask you
hmm
questions about this.
100%.
Did you start doing the notebook thing and taking down these bits? How did you learn to do that? Is this training or did you do it naturally?
I started to do it when I worked at Second City because back then the way we write our shows at Second City is you write them through improv and it's like this 10-week process where the cast of 5 or 6 people are in process together. You meet every day during the day from like 12 to 4 and 12 to 5. Then you take a little break, you do the show at night, and you try out your ideas in the improv set after the show. So that's like a Second City process. So my point is, I got used to always having a notebook because I was in writing process. And I think somebody probably recommended it to me. If I really think of the initial impetus for this, it was probably like, hey, you should always be writing down your ideas. You should always have a notebook in case something
Mm.
comes to you. So it was probably recommended. I just, for the life of me, 20 years ago, I can't remember who said that. But
Yes.
but it's a habit I got into then. And so then I always have like a little notebook. Now, of course, you can always take notes on these things, my friends, but I prefer a pen and paper. So,
Yes.
yes. Yeah.
Those of us among us that are a little bit older, we have our
Yes.
ways.
We
Yes.
have our ways.
If you've mentioned Second City a couple of times, if you wouldn't
Mhm.
mind, perhaps some of our students know what that is, but perhaps some don't. Can you tell us what is Second City?
Yeah, so Second City is a sketch comedy or an improv and sketch comedy theater. It was started in Chicago in 1950. It You may recognize some alumni of the Second City. So it is a live stage show, and like I say, it is a sketch show, but it's written through improv, and then there's always an improv set after the pre-written sketch portion of the show. So like famous alumni, many of those alumni have gone on to do like SNL and things like that. So names you might recognize would be like Tina Fey or Steve Carell or Stephen Colbert. Those are
Hmm.
some of the Americans. On the Canadian side, we have like Catherine O'Hara. I know, may she rest, who's recently passed away. John Candy, Joe Flaherty, Eugene Levy. These are all people who worked in that theater. And yeah, and it's been in Toronto for, I think I want to say 1974 is when it came to Toronto. Yeah, it's an outstanding theater that which also has a training center. So a lot of people come there to take improv classes, learn, and we offer all kinds of things, from sketch writing to improv to stand up to all of those kinds of things. Yeah,
Very cool. Thank you.
it is. It is cool.
And so one thing that jumps out at me is that you didn't explain in detail there, but you mentioned that comedy is more of a hobby than it is a profession now. And we'll
hmm
talk about your move to LA. You mentioned briefly that you lived in Los Angeles
hmm
for 8 years. But I'm curious to know because, and I think our students might find this interesting. So this is not your work. You're not on the bus thinking, I need to work, so I'm going to write bits down. You're doing this, it sounds like, why?
Great question. The stand-up bug in particular. So yes, as I've already alluded to, it was work for me when I was doing sketch and improv. When I moved to LA, I still wanted to pursue sort of like comedy or do something artistic. And I was there seeking out acting work, which this is another story, did not come to fruition in the end. And I kind of did a big pivot. But the urge to do sort of stand up came because it was something I could do on my own. I didn't have to get together with anybody. It was kind of a solo thing that I could just do. It was very easy. And it was also sort of that triple crown of comedy. It was the one, sketch, improv, stand up. It was the one I hadn't sort of conquered yet. So I think there was a little bit of a personal drive to do it. But when you're saying it, why do it? I guess it is that I guess it is a creative outlet. I guess it is as like truly a hobby where it's like I
Hmm.
have these funny things and I want to do them. When I was doing stand up in LA, I was like, oh, I love this. I'm just a performer at heart. Like even all my jobs, even the facilitation and the workshop, it's all performing in sort of a different way. So like even when I was in LA, I wrote an entire comedy album. So like I did like an hour of stand up. And it does exist on Spotify if anyone wants to listen to it. But and then that kind of became a goal because I've always also found in my life like having a short-term goal, something to kind of focus on can help with sort of with them when you're feeling kind of idle or like or maybe you are in a job that isn't completely fulfilling or something like that. So you kind of have another goal, something on the side that you're sort of going towards. Did that answer the why question?
Yeah, I think so. I mean,
I
I
think
just think
so.
what I think is great about it is that I think a lot of times today we hear about, oh, people are like going from one point to the next and they have to do this
Mhm.
work to get a certain job or have a career. But in reality, in the world, there are many things that we do that don't
Yeah.
really lead to anything specifically, or at least not
Yeah.
when we start doing them.
Yes.
But they just pique our curiosity, and there's something about it
Uh-huh.
that keeps us going. And I think it's important for our students to know that that's a thing.
I would agree, and I would also say to them to you never know where something is going to lead. So if there is something that you're excited about or passionate about, I think when I started writing stand up in LA, I didn't think, oh, in 2 years you're going to do a whole 1 hour show and it's going to be amazing and you're going to love it. But you just don't know where things are going to lead. So if there's something that you want to spend your time doing, then don't shy away from that. Yeah.
Yeah. And you mentioned that you're a performer, and I would say, anyone watching this can kind of already see that certainly, which is great,
Uh-huh.
which is great.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like part of what I wanted to ask you about is
Hmm.
these transferable skills that sometimes young people don't hear about when
Hmm.
you study theater or the arts more kind of broadly. So I guess I have a few questions related to that if you're up for
Hmm.
it. My first
Yeah.
is, did you always know this about yourself, that you were a performer, that this is what lit you up, you want to do this? Like how old were you when you realized this is the kind of thing you wanted to do?
Yes, Jay, I did always know. But the defining moment was when I was 9 years old. I went to Neptune Theater. My mom took me to see Cinderella at Neptune Theater, and I will honestly never forget it. And I was just watching the show, and I was like, I want to do that. And I think I said that to my mother, and she had like the program, and on the back she was like, "Oh, well, look, Neptune Theater has classes," and like she signed me up for like classes like that day, and that was it. And then I was steadfast. So all the way through high school, it was like the second I could take a drama class, which wasn't until high school, so like grade 10 for us in Nova Scotia, I took drama. That was my thing. And then I think I took it like again because I had done all the credits. Like by the time you get to grade 12, like I think there's only 3 levels, and I just took level 3 again and again. I something like that. But I was just so glad not to have to take gym anymore. Not that physical fitness isn't important, but I just hated gym. But yeah, and then my plan was so clear. This is an example of when like I had such a clear vision, and I was like, then you're gonna go to Dalhousie, you're gonna get into the theater program, you're gonna do that. At the end of that, I wasn't sure what to do next, but then my voice teacher, you sort of have this meeting at the end of university in the theater program, and it's kind of a what do you want to do next kind of thing. And Susan Stackhouse, my voice teacher, she was like, Leslie, she was like, you've always been very funny. Spoiler alert, the Dalhousie theater program wasn't a very funny program. She's like, I don't think you've really it was
Hmm.
very serious, very Shakespearean. She was like, I don't think you've had a chance to kind of explore that very much. She said, I think you should move to Toronto and try to work at the Second City. I didn't even know what Second City was. And I said, and I listened to her, and that's exactly what I did. So then that became my next goal. So first part of my life, go to Dow Theater School. Then it became work at Second City, and those two things came to fruition. So
Okay. Very
yeah.
cool. How long did it take you to, can you tell us just briefly about how did
Mhm.
you make inroads to get into Second City? I imagine you didn't know anybody.
100%. So I moved to the big city of Toronto. I was from Halifax, Nova Scotia, so this was huge. So I moved to Toronto. So immediately, what I started to do was I sought out a few people who were doing the things that I wanted to do and asked them if they would just speak to me. And this is something that I've done my entire life, and I've just done it again recently as I've kind of pivoted more into back into facilitation. So I cannot recommend this enough to anybody listening. That it's not that you're going and asking people for jobs or for work. You're asking them. You're saying, "Hey, you are doing something that I would like to do. Can you tell me how you did it?" Exactly as you're asking me now, right? And what I got from that is you get some tips, some pieces of information. So from all those people I met with, they'd say, I think you should do this, Leslie, or I think you should do that. So I started taking all the pieces of advice that worked. And I started taking classes with like Theater Sports Toronto, which was at the time was another improv school, taking classes at Second City. Um, some great advice I got from one gal who was an alumni of Second City was she was like, be busy, like actually don't put all your eggs in the Second City basket. She was like, be busy. She's like, you're going to be more attractive to them if you're doing a bunch of other stuff. And I was like, great, no problem. So did that kind of thing. So that's why I sought out other theaters and other places to, take classes and do things like that. Then every audition I could apply to, I did. So I moved there in 2000, started sort of implementing all these things, talking to people, taking their advice. Then all the auditions I could, I actually auditioned, the first thing I auditioned for was called Tony and Tina's Wedding. And it was an interactive dinner theater show that played for so long. Anyway, and I booked that. And that was produced by Second City, but it was kind of like adjacent. So it wasn't quite the main stage where I wanted to be, but it was in the world, same producers. So that then a year later in 2002, I auditioned for the touring company and got it. And then I was an understudy for the touring company. And then you kind of just work your way up. So I was in the touring company for 5 long years. So I don't want to talk to any of these people in Tourco now who are like, it's been 6 months. Why haven't I moved up yet? I'm not interested in that. I was there for 5 years, working, trolling, getting in a van and driving to Sudbury. But it was great. It was so much learning. And then I got promoted to the main stage show. Yeah.
Wow. So
Hmm.
this is a long time you've been in this world,
Oh, yeah. 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 Yeah.
learning, building,
Yes.
and that's a very cool story to go there. I don't know if you knew
Hmm.
anybody in Toronto, but it's helpful because online these days it often appears as though people from one day to the next,
Oh,
they have a windfall or they all of a sudden they just decide to start. But the truth is there are always many years like this on the touring bus or whatever it is. So that's helpful to hear.
100%. Yes.
Yeah.
And two quick thoughts on that. One, of course, I don't know how popular what social media things people are into these days, but just remember people are only putting their best stuff on social media. And, nobody's up there putting up like the hard days or how disappointed they are that they're 5 years in a van or whatever. Like that's not what's being shown. And even from like a Hollywood perspective, one thing I learned about like actors is being there and getting to know people who are very successful. There's always that story of like, oh, it was her first audition and now she's, a star. That's never actually the truth. They also all have stories of toil or years or things or what have you. And what I learned also is sometimes they're still toiling, like that the last job ends and you still have to get the next job. So yeah,
Mm.
this idea of that yeah, that it's so easy or you're only seeing people's successes. Like, no, no, no. We're all looking for the next thing. We're all continually growing and changing and not
Yes.
struggling, but pursuing, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some struggle
Yeah.
in there for sure, I would
Oh,
say.
definitely. Yeah, 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 yeah.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
That leads us to a big thing that we like to talk about in the program is failure. And many of our
Oh,
mentors will
yeah.
say, well, I don't use the word failure, but basically times that didn't go as planned or times where you were heartbroken or you were let down. So is there a failure that you'd like that stands out to you that that you learned something from that you'd like to share with our students?
God, there's so many. And I'm not afraid of the word failure, believe me, my friends. Um, yeah, there's a couple. So I had a couple pre-planned, but let me do this one first because you said heartbroken. And yes, there was a time when it was down to me and one other person for a TV show. Spoiler alert, I was heartbroken. I didn't get it. So it's like you get to the screen test point. So basically you go and there's four roles. So there's two sets of four. So there's a woman who looks like me and acts like me. There's two men who would be our husband who look like each other. It's like it's very surreal. And
Mm.
you just keep going into the room in different combinations. And I did not get that. And that was definitely a heartbreak because it's like you're so close. But I guess what I learned from that is there's always another job.
Hmm.
It just
Hmm.
it is what it is. You know what I mean? Like that because and then shortly after that I did book another TV gig, which was a show that ended up not being as successful as the one that I missed out on. But yeah, I think there was a little something in like this one thing is not the end all be all, which kind of takes me back to all the eggs in one basket lesson that person told me about Second City. And I was like, yeah, you just need to have lots of eggs and lots of baskets, maybe.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, yeah.
Did you find that getting to that final point in the audition, did that help you learn how to prepare any better? Or I guess what I'm getting at is I
Yes.
have found personally that it's hard for me to really do everything that I could possibly do to be prepared for something unless I have that final moment, that true
Mhm.
opportunity. So how did you benefit from losing out there in that one audition?
How did I benefit from losing out? Do you mean like because on the preparedness, I did everything I could to prepare because I was like, I don't want to have any regrets and go in and go, you could have done more. So, booked a session with a coach, went through the whole thing, so that when I went in, I wasn't worried about like remembering the lines or anything. Like I was so comfortable and I could just play and be there and
Mm.
and give my everything, right? Um, but benefiting from not getting it. Um, well, on the one hand, I was like, okay, you can be su this is what it was. This is the lesson. I got it. There are so many things out of your control. And I remember thinking that at the time because I actually ended up getting a beautiful note from the director who does not have to do this. Like this is not common, but he personally wrote me to kind of say like you were my first choice, but the network was uncomfortable because you didn't have as much experience like on paper as the other woman. So they wanted the more experienced woman. And
Mhm.
he's like, kind of like sorry kind of thing, but I liked you best, which is very nice to hear. But then of course you're like, but it doesn't matter. Um, but I guess the point being is that I was like, yeah, there's so many things that are out of our control in life in general. So you can really only control what you can control. So I think that was the big benefit is that I controlled being as prepared as I could. I controlled, my attitude and being present and being there on the day and kind of giving it my all. And then I can also kind of control how I deal with this heartbreak or this letdown. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
great. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Okay, I'd love to know a little bit about, or maybe just if you can touch on, because
Hmm.
a lot of the young people here, if they're interested in the arts, they think, oh, you're never going to make a living doing that. It's, only 5%, whatever it is, that are ever
Yeah.
going to do anything, choose something practical. But I'm often espousing the virtues of the transferable skills so can you
Definitely.
tell us, one or two examples of things you learned studying the arts that
Hmm.
are directly applicable or useful to you in your everyday life or in your work today?
100%. And I will say, as sort of like an overthought, there's so much research and stuff out there right now, even in the business and in the business space, where they're like, you need improvisers in your office, you need people with people skills. There's a lot of stuff happening with AI and moving to online that I will tell you a lot of employers right now are looking for people who can do this, who can speak, who can connect, who can be like, maybe make things a little bit light, bring energy. Like they want people that are open and easy to work with. So the number one skill is just being a people person and being like genuine. And I think that you're like, well, we could do that without having a theater degree. Of course you can. But personally, from improv in particular, has taught me how to sort of connect with people, kind of like a little less fear about sort of like talking or being a little more open, even just like a little bit vulnerable, like those kinds of things.
Mhm.
But other so that's sort of like a general. They want the type of people, like artists are people who we want in a room, whether we know it or not, right?
Mm.
You might be good at
Mm.
spreadsheets, but can you also like sit down and have this conversation and be outgoing? Client facing, that's a word you'll all hear a lot. We need someone who's good with clients. Well, here I am. I'm great with clients. I don't, not to toot my own horn, but I already have. I can't untoot it. So that, but yeah.
I think we can all probably understand that that's true, just even from a few minutes in
Okay.
this interview. Yeah.
Okay, good, 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 good. But yeah, there are so many skills, things that are more like resilience and accountability. Like these are things that actually theater and the arts teaches you, right? Because you have to be responsible for your own, rehearsal, your own process, your own people. If you've gone through theater school, you're a resilient person. Like you don't quit. You have fortitude, you have strength, you have stamina, you have all these things. These are real and people might say, well, those aren't like tangible skills, but they're attributes and they're attitudes and their behaviors that you learn and you can get from the arts that are absolutely, transferable for sure. And then I won't go, I mean, it's too much probably for our time, but like the skills that you have or learn through improv in particular are absolutely so transferable. Everything from like collaboration, good communication, ability
Hmm.
to pivot, like all of those things are vital in, I would say, any industry. And in a lot of business, they're looking for people who can do those things. Yeah.
Totally agree. And what I
Mhm.
would invite anybody who's watching to pay attention to or to think about is how clear has every word that Leslie has said so far been? And
Oh.
think about, your average person that you speak to or her gestures or facial expressions. This is all stuff that I suspect, Leslie, if you had chosen something different to do with your
Mhm.
time, would
Mhm.
be less developed. Perhaps you'd already be bubbly and positive and all these things,
Mhm.
but anyone who's watching, just pay attention to all the cues that Leslie, if you can, that she's
Yeah.
doing that are really helping her express herself very clearly right now. I suspect that a
100%.
lot of that is thanks to the training.
100%. And my friend and I, we always have a joke where we're like, the training kicks in. So like whatever we're doing, even if you're nervous or you're out of place, or since again, I have had so many jobs, it's just so many jobs. And sometimes I am faking it till I make it in these jobs. Like I'll get thrown into a job and be like, I really don't know how to do this. But I have the ability, the training kicks in, and I have the ability to like to just stick with it, to ask the questions, to at least look and seem confident, to say things like, I'm not sure, let me check on that, rather than like, I don't know what I'm doing. So yeah, all of those things come from years of training and being in high stress situations, I think. Yeah.
Thank you. And so we're talking
Yeah.
about people skills largely. I would love to know, we're going to wrap up in a few minutes here.
Okay.
I would love to know a lesson that you've learned about relationships, whether it was through
Mm.
work or training or just in your life. What's something that you'd like to share with our students that's important for relationships?
I think I think it would be this, that vulnerability, a little bit of vulnerability goes a long way. And what I mean by that is, I feel like, and I do this, I'm very guilty of this, make a lot of assumptions about how other people feel about us or what's going on. So a little bit of saying like, hey, or revealing to others, less about asking them, but when we can be a little bit vulnerable and say, hey, I was a little bit nervous about doing this task. So can you just walk me through A, B, and C? That goes a lot longer, than maybe just asking the question, and maybe the person's frustrated because they feel like they've already walked you through it. If you can give a little bit of vulnerability, this is where I'm coming from, and this is who I am and how I'm feeling. I think that can go a really, really long way, both in personal and professional relationships, for sure.
That's great.
Hmm.
Couldn't agree more.
Hmm.
And I don't know if you have any thoughts on this, but one thing that I have learned is a barrier for many people that I work with, in particular, even older people, professionals,
Hmm.
is they say, well, yeah, if I kind of give that vulnerability, if I open myself up, or if I show the person that I'm forgiving, then I'm going to get taken advantage of. And I'm often spending my time thinking, okay, well, you also need to be prepared or know what you will do in the eventuality that that may happen, that the person will push
Hmm.
too hard or you'll need to draw your boundaries. But
Hmm.
people automatically assume, I think, that if they are
Hmm.
vulnerable, somebody will, sometimes people assume that they'll be taken advantage of, right?
Yes, yes, 100%. And
So
you're, mhm, go. Yeah.
I was just going to say for you, how do you like what's an example or how do you navigate? Have you experienced this where you maybe open up too much or someone tries to take advantage of you, and how do you curtail that, or have you ever had to?
Have I ever had that where I've opened up too much or someone? I certainly feel like, huh, this is a good question. That's a great question. Oh no, you may have stumped me. Or I'm like, no, I'm always vulnerable and it's perfectly fine. No, 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 that's not true. I think, yes, I think there's definitely been times where maybe it's like I've shared too much info. It is a gauge and it is a balance, I think, for sure. And especially in professional relationships, you're right. Sometimes you don't want to be too vulnerable because it's just sometimes it's also just inappropriate. Like you don't need to be coming in and giving your whole life story. So again, in a professional setting, I'm encouraging more things like, hey, I was a little bit unsure of this, or here's honestly, or like, oh, I'm a little bit even afraid to do this on my own. Can you, or things like that. Those are the little
Mm.
pieces of vulnerability. I'm trying to think of a time if someone's really tried to take advantage of me. Probably some students back in the day, because I think that spoiler alert, I come across or I am a fairly fun teacher, but somehow I also managed to create a persona where people knew that I was joking and it was all good until I wasn't.
Hmm.
So and I know you're gonna ask, how did you do that, Leslie? I can't remember, but all I remember is that a student came up to me one time and said, we had something called conservatory, and I was their final conservatory teacher, which means I had them for 6 months. And they were like, at the end of it, they were like, I was really excited when I found out like I had you, because everyone's like, oh, Leslie's great, but she's really hard. She's really strict. And I was like, what? Hard and
Mm.
strict, right? But I was like, I guess somehow, and I know you want the how, I had created that balance of like, I will give and I will be flexible and I will be these things. But when the moment comes, and maybe that's it, is because I was like that, there was a definite shift when I was like, okay, now I'm not joking, or now this is serious, or now we have work to do, or something like that.
Hmm.
Um, yeah. So I've kind of gone off topic a little bit there, but I think that's, yeah.
No, it's great. I think a lot of times people don't necessarily, we don't always know like where did this come from or how did it happen? When
Mm-hmm.
did it happen that I was able to
Mm-hmm.
kind of delineate, like both be open and draw
Mm-hmm.
boundaries clearly? But
Mm-hmm.
I guess the major point is that those are both two useful skills, but it's not very useful to fret about what will happen if I
Correct.
am
Yes.
vulnerable. Yeah.
Yes. And one other little thing that I might, a little, if it's kind of an advice thing that people might want to drop in, is I have employed this many times in my life. When I am in some situations, I immediately just quickly go, what is the outcome I want from this? And sometimes that will gauge, for example, very quickly, I had kind of like a boss at one point, who I did not love or get along with, or even respect. Anyway, but I had to work for him. He was the producer. He was the head of everything. So, and I remember one time he had sort of brought me in for a meeting, and basically he was accusing me of, essentially of doing something, of allowing the cast to drink before the show. I'll just say what the story was. And
Mhm.
I was so appalled that he would think that I would do that, and that I was, because again, I'm also known as a very sociable person. I like to party after work, etc. But I was so appalled. But in the moment, I was like, you have two choices, Leslie. Like, you can either like be outraged and like give him a piece of your mind right now, or like whatever, or you can cry, or you can like do all these things. I said, but I was like, what's the outcome I want? I was like, I know this isn't true of me. This is absolutely preposterous. I want this meeting to end. That was my goal. So I decided that's what I wanted. So I just kept a smile and said, oh, I said, oh, that's ridiculous. Of course, I'm not doing that. And then he was kind of like, oh, okay. And then I left.
Mm.
So think about the outcome that you want sometimes in some situations. I was like, I don't need to engage this person. I don't want him to like me. I don't need to, et cetera, et cetera.
It sounds like you also, in that kind of what I suspect was only a few moments, you kind of had a lot
Mhm.
of emotions, you processed them and you managed them, which we didn't name it yet, but from improv and
Yes.
acting, that's probably a really transferable skill.
I was just going to say, as you were speaking, I was like, there it is. It's another transferable skill from theater, 100%.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very cool. There are many other things that
Mhm.
I would like to ask
I
about.
know. I'm sorry. We go on and on. Yep.
But I would like to really quickly, our
Hmm.
students are always excited to talk about travel and they do travel as part of their discovery
Hmm.
year. So, what is your favorite place that
Oh
you've
my
ever
God.
been to? And really quickly, why?
Oh, it's such a cruel question, because I traveled so much for my job, especially in the past couple of years, all over the states to all kinds of beautiful cities and places. But if I had to pick, and you're making me pick, I'm going to say New Zealand. I had the fortune, I was able to go there with my in-laws. My sister-in-law was living there at the time, and it is unlike any other place on earth. So anytime I'm in a place where I'm like, wow, this looks otherworldly, that's so I could say that about a couple other places that I've visited, but New Zealand was absolutely like, I was transported. You were in another time and
Mhm.
space. I can see why Lord of the Rings was completely shot there. It is another planet for sure. And yeah, it was very
Mhm.
special. Hmm.
Nice. Part of the Commonwealth too makes it easier.
I love it.
Sometimes.
Yes.
Okay, one final question, Leslie. So, as we've alluded to briefly, our students
Mhm.
live in a very different world than you or I would have lived in
Mm.
when we were 18 or 20 years old. And
Yes,
a lot of what
yes.
they see is through a screen, and it's
Ugh.
accentuated to appear beautiful and wonderful. And so, if you were to offer one piece of advice for students living in a challenging time, politically, economically, perhaps socially, in the world that we are in today, very different.
Hmm.
What advice would you offer them to be able to live a good life?
Hmm. I have it. It would be, I wrote it down. This is how important it is. Only you get to decide what success means in your life. You're the only one who truly knows what success feels like, because you're the one living your life. So, as an actor, I lived for a very long time in a profession where success is gauged so much by outside people, and the gauges are impossible to attain, like fame or fortune. Like these are things that aren't, not very many people get to that level, but that's how it was sort of viewed. So I spent a lot of my life and a lot of time figuring out what success really meant to me and what it felt like to me. And my second piece of advice would be that remember that success does not only apply to your job, your 9 to 5. There's 128 other hours in the week. How full and big is, success applies to all areas of your life. So to really like think about that. And that's a way that might be able to help in this world where we are seeing everything being so beautified and everyone else looks like they're doing great, but you're the one living it. So you get to decide what success feels like for you. Yeah.
I love it. Thank you.
Yeah. It's true.
It is true. It is true.
Yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes takes a while for us to
It
learn for some of
does.
us.
It
Yes.
does. It does. Believe me. Yeah, yeah. I talk a big game. I learned it recently. I've been working on it my whole life. Maybe learned it in the past year or two, I think. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes,
Really,
yes.
really had it set in. Yeah.
Agreed. And
Mhm.
it's not always we learn it and everything is rosy after. We sometimes have to learn these lessons multiple times, right?
Again and again. Yep.
Yeah. Thank you, Leslie. This was great. I
Oh
really
my
appreciate
God.
you doing it.
Yes. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
And thanks for tuning in. This has been another Good Life conversation. We're happy to have had you, and we hope to have you at the next one.